There, now I can put that there. There's the
X, J, Y, Y, 727H.
Why is that? It's not certain this.
Oh, that's not very well. Yeah, the objects are usually two way. That's when you can more example. You type it in. Right. Look.
So I'm going to give folks a few minutes to make sure everybody has a chance to get the.
And you didn't put dot com when you were on, put dot com. You want to copy the one.
Yeah.
No.
Anybody who has not been able to get this? I'm not seeing any hands. I'll be able to bop it back up if anybody still needs it here. All right. So, we saw some basic action / interaction. It's not really interaction yet. We can't control it. We can't do anything. It just kind of happens for our first version. Unity by itself doesn't really have any standard behaviors to add to stuff other than physics. If you want some concept of what we usually refer to as game logic, it has to come from somewhere. And well, there are sometimes asset packs and things you can import that have the skeleton of a certain kind of game. We're pretty much starting things from scratch here. If we want custom logic, it exists in what is called a script file. Scripts are assets. You may not see these yet. If you don't, then have your window here, find the file that you downloaded. Like mine is in my desktop, but yours is probably in your downloads folder. Here it is, and drag it in here. And you should see a little window pop up. In my case, it says nothing to import because everything is already here. In your case, it will probably have a little list of stuff. 6 or 7 things. And then you can say there should be an import button. Yes. So we'll see what happened. And then, 4 of these guys will show up. You may need to open a new scene file, go into scenes and pick something called demo scene here in order to see this collection of existing little dots. Yeah. If you're trying to get access to it after hours or from the dorms or something, I need to update it, but the file is also going to be on Discord. I should probably just put the URL there, honestly. It's probably going to be easier.
We also have the file stream SharePoint.
Oh, the SharePoint. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm connected there. Maybe is that linked or something. I don't know.
The only person that isn't, and that's just because you don't have your Clark email. But I'm in. I spelled my Clark email.
All right.
Yeah. Oh. I got it for another few months. Yeah.
So let's see. For this to happen, yeah.
One last thing. Yeah. It's because you're Googling it, not going to get on the video.
XJYY727H. So if I want something to be able to interact with, I'm going to need to throw some kind of object out here. In this case, I want something that's maybe visibly a little clearer, a little more distinct than some of these other guys. I'm going to start with this one that's got a little more articulation on it. And I'm going to put it out here kind of in the middle. Now, if I wanted to interact physically, I still need some of the same stuff that we did before. So it still wants a circle collider. If I go here, add component, circle collider 2D. And in order to be able to move it around, I'm going to apply a thing to it that we didn't use in the morning called a constant force, whose job is just to push it, basically. Here is a constant force 2D. Now, it makes no sense to push something that can't move or that can't be accelerated. One of the things you'll see here is that adding a constant force to it automatically forced there to be a rigid body. And this is something that we can essentially attempt to use as a sort of paddle back and forth to try and affect things as they fall. It's not going to be a super smooth thing. Right now, the force is nothing. So that's ultimately what we need to do is we need to find a way to translate user input into changes to this force. And fortunately, I've already provided this, although we are going to run into a couple of other things before I start doing that. And the first one is gravity. If I fire this up, even without putting a script on it or anything, when you write scripts, they become components. They become things that you can add to game objects. And they can have settings in them. Right now, it's still falling just like it was one of our little target, rubber balls. We don't want that. We want it to stay. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my rigid body. One of the settings under the rigid body 2D says gravity scale. And this basically means that each object multiplies the worldwide gravity by this number to decide how much it should accelerate. It's a little bit different from real life. There's the standard thing about gravity accelerates all objects at the same rate, regardless of their mass. You may remember that from physics class. This is partly to emulate things like not every object has equal wind resistance. In this particular case, I'm going to turn it to 0 because this is a control. This is not a thing that I want to just have fall. And so now if I test before I go any further, indeed, just sits there. So a few scripts to take care of different parts of this. I'm going to close up my objects here. The one that we need at the moment is this one called slide. There's a chunk of code that goes with it. Don't worry about understanding the code right now. We'll talk more about coding over there on Thursday and Friday. But if I take this and I drag it onto my object, you can drag it into the scene view. You can drag it onto the object in the hierarchy. If the object is open in the inspector, you can drag it in the inspector until you see a blue line, a thick blue line, not a thin blue line. But once you've done that to one of these places, you can highlight it. You can see all the components that we just had in the inspector. By the way, if the inspector is cluttered up, you can use little triangles next to different components to zip them up, basically. Slide doesn't say much, but there is a section here called control. If I double check the settings real quick, yes, it is a value and it is an axis. This is an input action. We'll learn a little bit more about these guys probably early next week or during the project if it solves a problem you need to deal with. An input action basically is a thing that knows how to watch for one or more things happening on the user, like on the keyboard or on the mouse or on a gamepad or a joystick or on the touchscreen or whatever. It contains some instructions and you can then watch, see when it happens. That part is handled by the code, but we need to say if we want to push it left and right, how are we going to put that info in? What kind of command do we want that to do that with? There's a couple really obvious ones. At least I think they're pretty obvious. Let's like a control, say we want some way to make it go left and some other way to make it go right.
Left and right arrows.
Left and right arrows is a pretty obvious one. A and D also are fairly well established. If we had, a joystick, we could use push left and push right on it. It's not here. So to add that to it, this little plus button that says add binding, if you hover over it, and I'm going to say add positive negative binding. This is actually an important bit of it, because we want a key that makes it negative and another key that makes it positive. So this pops up. It has a name. I'm going to leave that alone. It starts out by saying negative positive, but right now they say no binding and they don't do anything. But if I click on one of these or double click on it, I get this little window. It's kind of hard to see that popped up over it, but it says path at the top. So I'm going to, when I click on this, it comes up with all sorts of different physical devices we could interact with. We're going to put down keyboard. And for this one, I think with left and right, it's whatever is appropriate. I'm going to pick by character mapped to key. You want to put, like, if you're going off of the regular letters, you probably always want the ones that are in the spot that people are used to. So you could pick by key location on keyboard. But in this case, they have specific meanings, although they don't have characters mapped to the up and down because they're not characters. So I'm going to say by location, and I'm going to go to left arrow. And then I'm going to click outside of that to close it. We'll click on positive, do the same thing here and say right arrow. And so now we can see negative left arrow, positive right arrow. Once that's done, still sitting there. Now if I hold the right arrow, it starts accelerating. If I then hold the left arrow, it will slow down. Should. It may have gone too far off the screen for me to easily. Oh, there we go. See, in this case, it is a force. Holding left or right down accelerates it, not moves it. So it can be a little bit chunky to control, because what is happening is it is just adjusting the amount of force, essentially, and then the force is going to keep pushing it every frame. I could probably clean that code up a little bit to make it stop doing that when you let go. Once we have that in place, so we have this particular behavior, we've added this in. If you want other things, it can handle more than one. So if you want, you can do something like add another binding, probably still a positive negative binding, and go in and, for instance, pick a keyboard path that is, not space, is the A key. And let's see, and go here. Double click that, choose the D key. And now, for instance, those are both options, and you can use either one, and they'll both work simultaneously. Different levels of using input actions are very handy because, among other things, they allow you to define your game behavior in terms of the ideas of what is supposed to happen, instead of just fixedly saying, is the Q key down? Which is what most people program the first time they learn things. It's not flexible. There's no real way to let the user modify it, things like that. This is a very adaptable system, and you can write the rest of your code just in terms of, is this positive or negative, basically. We have some minimal control. It's not super sensitive, but it does work. I am going to throw in something that can fall down, which is basically just going to be a repeat of last time. I'll move it up here. I will add the same sorts of things that we had before, a circle collider and a rigid body 2D. And I can let that fall basically into here. And we're going to run into one small problem if I'm estimating things correctly, which is that it clocked our paddle and knocked it right out of the scene along with the thing that landed on it. There is a solution to this, because turning off gravity was one thing. Gravity is not automatically causing the thing to fall. It is causing the other one, but that one is hitting it, and it's hitting it with a certain amount of force, and so it's still knocking it downward via transfer of momentum. In this case, if I go back to my paddle and I go back to my rigid body, there's another section here near the bottom of the settings for rigid bodies that says constraints. And these are things about the rigid body that we can prevent from changing as a result of collisions and other forces. And in this case, where it says freeze position, there's two checkboxes. I don't want to freeze X. That's something I want it to change. I do want to freeze Y, and this means that no matter what clonks into it, it will never go up or down. It might go left or right, but it won't go up or down. It does indeed give it a little bit of a push, so it starts rolling off to the side, but it does not fall. Now, one of the things I said yesterday, when all you have is mechanics, what you have is a toy. That's not a bad thing by itself. But normally what we want to do is we want to go a step beyond that and create a game. That means we need some kind of goal concept, something that ranks or rates the actions we take and builds them into things. And if I run this, you will see there's this text on here that says score 0. Nothing else happening at the moment. If I find it, for reasons I've never been able to satisfactorily decide, your two-dimensional UI is always this giant rectangle that's completely dissociated from everything else. I have to zoom out a million miles to be able to see this thing, but it's this object right here. And at the moment, there's a separate script on it called display. That is also one of the scripts that I've written. I meant to take it off, but it doesn't have any settings. It doesn't need any special features. Its job is just to watch for when the score changes and change this text, say what the score is. But right now, there's nothing out there that could change the score. So if I want a thing, let me zoom back in on my main screen here. I can actually see what's going on. Yes.
It's going to be step, right? So that you apply it to an object in the scene to visualize it?
In this particular way, the score, there's two different things here, three pieces actually. The score is responsible for knowing what the score is. If you come from a programming background, it's what's called a static class, basically. It just sort of exists out in the void. That's not necessarily. Whereas the display, that is attached to the text thing, that watches the score to see what has changed. We have one more thing here that we haven't put in yet, and that is the goal script. And this is the thing whose job it is to say, hey, I should change the score. We don't have one of these yet. This is the missing component at the moment. There's a lot of things that could be used. I'm going to go with something real easy because it's built in at the moment. I'm over here. I am going to go to 2D objects, sprites. Most of the time when you add a sprite, it is you have some image or something you want to add. In this case, I just want something quick, very quick and generic. I'm just going to pick square, and it will literally just give me a white box. Let me move this over a little bit. I'm going to scooch my paddle out of the way a little bit because I need to test my mechanics without that complicating things. And now I want to see what happens when this thing falls. Is the goal in a good place for testing? Okay, went right through the middle. Good sign. Nothing happened. In order to detect a collision, there has to be a collider somewhere to collide with. I'm going to go back to my square in the first step, not the last step, but the first step. is to add another collider. This is not a circle, so I'm not going to put a circle collider on it. I'm going to put a box collider 2D on it. And it would kind of work, but as stuff might go through the corners and not hit the circle, and in my experience, bad hit boxes is one of the things most readily guaranteed to cause people to become furious with your game. Controllers will be thrown when people are like, that didn't touch me, why did I die? Or I totally shot him, why didn't he die? So we want a collider that is the same shape, takes up the same space as the thing we can see on screen. Or if I run this, we run into a new wrinkle. Doing okay? Which is now just lands clonk on there and eventually rolls off. Not really what I necessarily want to happen for a zone or a goal or score zone. Most of the time, goals are places where you watch for something to cross a line or to go through a space. There's a built-in behavior for this. It was going through before, but we had no way to know it was going through. The box here on basically on every collider that says is trigger. And if you check it off, the collider is still there, but it is now a ghost. What? Intangible, yes, if that's what you said. It will no longer stop, bounce, push, anything, but it will detect that things collide with it. And it will signal scripts that are connected to it that can happen. So when I say trigger, I run it again, we are pretty much back to where we were a moment ago. It's going right through again, but we're not getting any score yet. But there is a difference, which is that the trigger is present. I have this other script here, goal. We haven't seen it used yet. It's quite short when you look at it. The key bit here is this bit that says on trigger enter 2D. This is going to happen automatically when a trigger attached to the same object or a child object has something go through it that has a rigid body on it. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to add it to that. And now we can see that along with the box collider, there is also a goal. What's going on?
Yeah.
We're going to be popping in and out of the sessions over the next 2 weeks, take some photos and video, and maybe do some interviews with folks who are up for it. So just wanted to say hi, and if you're uncomfortable being on camera or you didn't consent to being photographed, just give us a heads up.
Thank you. All right. So at this point, when we run this, because of the goal script here, it's the waiting for it to reload. It always is. We will have this go bounce through there, and the score changed to 1. Yay. There's 3 different elements involved in making this happen. There's when did we hit something, there's what's the score right now, and there's show the score to the player. Yes, Rose.
So is on sport kind of an object like display scripts too?
Yes. If I take a look at this here, when you want to display things that are just like user interface, they're almost always part of something called a canvas. I preloaded this into the scene to save us time getting set up. And then this score is a child of that. It's part of that canvas. It has a canvas renderer on it that says it can be drawn. It has a text component that will draw some particular piece of text. And then it has a display script on it that watches the score for it to change and updates the text content when it sees that happen. Yes. Okay. So I have my square. It has a box collider. Box collider has the is trigger box checked off. And then there is also a goal script attached to the same box as another component. Now, a lot of times with things like this, if there's different zones, you might have different scores for different places. That's kind of a common trait here. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to move it over so it's like next to the other one. And in this case, my goal script has been written to, much like the slide script was written to say, what controls do you want to use? The controls are for going left and right, but what do you want them to be? This says, this number is supposed to be score, but how much score do you want? It defaulted to 1 because I thought it would be silly if you made goals and they were 0 until you said otherwise. That seemed weird. So in this case, I'm going to say, hey, some zones are more desirable. You want people to have better scores or smaller scores. I'm going to put a 5 on this one. And then the other thing usually is that we would like, most of the time we want someone to see which is which. The player should be able to know which zones are better or worse or whatever. And one thing you can do is you can put numbers or labels on them. Or in this particular case, I'm going to just tweak the visuals a little bit. Every sprite renderer has a color that can tint the sprite. When it's white, it just shows up exactly the way it was. But I'm going to go to this and I'm going to say, hey, I would like this to be green, please. And look there, my box just turned green. Then the only other thing I need to do is tweak this. See if we can get it to fall in that box instead. Okay, yep. And look there, scores 5. One relatively minor thing that's happened there is that the circle disappeared behind the green thing here, which is a little bit strange to me. I would sort of expect to be able to see it fall through. If we want to adjust that, there are what they call sorting layers that basically only apply to sprites. In this case, if I want something to appear behind, I can give it a more negative value, like order and layer -1, and that should cause the circle to be drawn in front of it when it goes by. Yeah, so go right across the box there. So right now we have one thing and we have a control that is really kind of sluggish and non-responsive. Like it works, you can move it around. It's just not easy to move it around with finesse. I'm not necessarily worried about changing that part. I've played plenty of games in my life that have awkward acceleration, deceleration based mechanics. It is not intrinsically a bad thing. Somebody once said that a puzzle, their definition of a puzzle was a simple problem with a bad user interface. A lot of, God, they're named after the creator mostly. The guy who did, it wasn't QWOP, but the one where you're stuck in a cauldron, getting over, yeah. The person who wrote them, basically, his name has become a class of games where the task is simple and the controls are deliberately awkward. Octodad kind of falls into that category too.
Made to make people angry. Octodad was sort of it tells that category by accident. I will.
Right. I mean, the challenge of Octodad is making the controls work. It's not tuned to be infuriating the way Fadian, I think Fadian is the term for them.
So I guess.
Yeah. Like that one is not tuned to be as infuriating as possible like the others are. It's the same idea. It's just a matter of scale. Now having one thing like right now, it's going to fall wherever, and there's no way we can get to it in time to affect its motion. This thing it's going to be long through by the time this comes here. Now, in an ideal world, I might have done something that just like spit out a new ball, every quarter of a second or something like that or whatever. I wrote all of these scripts over lunch, literally, so I did not have time to fit that one in. I'm going to take a cheap hack along the way, which is a thing that very commonly happens in development. If you want to test a thing out, you don't have a system in place to do it, but you can fake it. Very frequently, you'll do that and you'll see how it feels once you've done that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my falling circle here. put it like back in the middle here. And I'm going to zoom out a bit so I can watch what I'm doing. I'm just going to duplicate it a bunch and stack them on top of each other here. It would be really tedious to do them one at a time. So first I'm only going to do like 5 of them or something like that. And then thing you can do, I can shift click over here in the hierarchy to select all 5 of them. And then I can duplicate all 5 of them at once and move that up here and maybe zoom out a little bit more so that I can keep seeing. And now I could do that a couple more times. And if I really want a nice healthy dose, I could even expand my selection one more time and duplicate that. This is not a good long-term design. It would be hard to maintain. But very frequently, one takes a short-term design and uses it to fudge, and the only danger is that people get used to the short-term thing being there and they don't go back and fix it. And this happens with a frustrating degree of frequency. So this won't super be easy to play. It is technically playable. It is going to be very hard to do anything, but it is fun to watch. Because these balls don't only bounce off of the bumpers. As I wait for it to finish loading. They will also bounce off of each other. And so while it's not super playable, by the time I can get this into the way, they'll mostly have gone already. But it is fun to watch everything go bonk. So my invitation at this point, one, if you have any questions about what's going on here or how to tweak it or things, do feel free to ask, although I'm not going to get into too many details about the actual code until how these things work until we get a little further into things like that. But you can add other bumpers, you can add more goal zones, add different score amounts. Let's see, I didn't make it so you can easily just change the force multiplier. So that's not right, but you could add like an entire another paddle basically and be able to have a little more like interference capability because they would both move as you were hitting the controls. Question? Most of the score came with the scene. So if you open demo scene, that will work. The part that you do have to be able to do is when you make squares or zones that you want to fill in, you have to make sure that you add the script goal to them, and that lets you choose how much score.
Wait, so the score text in the demo scene?
The scene in here that should have been imported, this one here, this you open this and edit from that, it should already have the score text in it. Yes. Yes, it is not super visible.
Out of the box for me, so I can do it in the box.
It might depend a little bit on what the ratio of your screen window is. It is a thing I can actually fix because of course it's anchored off the wrong spot. If I anchor it off the corner, it should show up consistently.
Make it scale. You can also scale or just set the camera or not the canvas in the space so that it just shows like it shows the camera rectangle and this.
And I say there's certain choices. Yeah. I mean, in my experience, yeah, using it as screen space. Oh, let's see if we choose the render camera.
And then you just have to.
Okay, so yeah, that would be the other. So yeah, it shows up there. The choice of how they set up the canvas mechanics, it doesn't feel ideal.
It's bad because it also defaults to constant pixel size, which is the bane of everybody's like first experience with it. Because it's always like, oh, I built my game, but it's on anything that's not the one laptop I built it on. So now the canvas is completely off because it is
right. And then you have to start working with your canvas scaler and all these other elements. Yes. All right. But yeah, so you've got about 10, 15 minutes. Just play around with it, you know?
Does anybody need any help?
And yes, if you're stuck on anything, if you're getting red errors or something, we have plenty of people here who can help you out. Let me, in fact, fine tune this a little bit.
Or, so, the UI is for the and then game. The game check. If the game which out there, you're going to yeah.
You must train the AI.
Yeah, that's that role you are. Without.
All right, yeah.
Graduate hire to AI innovator. Could this be your story? Rocket ship emoji.
Oh, yeah, now we're,
Career mode on. Shut up.
where is it? Somebody sent me a message on LinkedIn a week or two ago. If I can readily find it.
I got a message. It was
Yeah. It said something about just the beginning. I came across your profile and wanted to reach out for a remote flexible game developer designer AI trainer opening that my team is hiring for. This role, you'll work closely with our research team using your expertise to review and evaluate AI generated content. Your insights will help train models. So normally I would just ignore this. I wrote back and just said, I would literally rather swear off my entire career and retrain as a plumber or something. Absolutely not.
Replace your job.
Like, wait, are we training our replacements? What? No. They're just going to do the same job as you, and eventually you won't work here anymore.
They only, which is like.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have the scenes folder here? You have in the scene something called demo scene. If you double click that, it should have some stuff in it that wasn't in the scene you did before.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, yeah. Usually it's easier to say yes than no. Cancel.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel a little bad because they definitely tried to put Text Mesh Pro in front for what you use in the UI. And unfortunately, to try and set the text from code on a PMP object turns out to be complicated, whereas in the legacy UI texting, is literally just dot text becomes blah. So I never use it. I always just go back to the old thing that they're trying to deprecate.
Yeah.
Of course, really, they're trying to move everybody over to this UI toolkit thing, which is why they're not fixing a bunch of this stuff, because they eventually just want to get everybody away from it entirely.
There's always a new system. Always fine.
Yes, there we go.